say, there's a lot of attention to detail required. So in terms of making it work, you've got to be prepared to test, and you've got to be prepared to learn quickly and adapt your strategy. Firstly, you've got to be ambitious. I've looked at the travel industry, and there's thousands of travel companies, but not many have tried TV. I think we're looking at about 2 or 3%. So a couple of hundred brands that are on TV. Probably most of the brands that you've heard of. It's not really that expensive, and there's so many great areas where you can be extremely specific. The audience kind of segments itself now. Once your ad's shown, you can even watch it in Google real time. You'll see a big spike of traffic onto your website. That will normally come back down again after 2 or 3 minutes. The response curve is different, so different channels have a slightly different response curve. It seems that the older audiences are slower to react. So if you're advertising on Sky News, you might see a longer response curve after an ad's shown. Whereas if you're on Comedy Central or E! Entertainment, it'll be a sharper up and down. In terms of the way that the travel industry sort of spend their money, it's very, very clear that there's a seasonality here, and you can see that 20% of the budgets are allocated in January. And we work with lots of travel advertisers, and that seems to be the focus. However, if you look at the budgets towards the end of the year, you could also see this as an opportunity to try something a little bit different. So either you go when it's incredibly busy. A lot of our brands will typically come on towards the end of December. When we're looking at TV, there's a bit of a drop in the price around the 20th of December once all the retailers have pulled off air. So you can typically get on TV for probably half the cost or less than you'd normally pay for that last week of December. So actually getting your campaign up and running then, or even earlier, can give you a little bit of a head start on your competitors. We've been lucky enough to work with a huge range of different travel brands, I think getting on for 40 different companies. So we've got a good understanding of the kind of programs that work, the channels that work, and as I say, we've gone through that process a lot in terms of finding out what doesn't work and conversely what does work really, really well. So this is just a little look at the brands that are on TV in 2015. And these are companies you probably all have heard of. They'll spend, I would say, somewhere above £1 million. Probably the top one there, Trivago, probably getting on for 12 or 15 million. Expedia, probably 10 million. And that's probably the perception of TV, that you've got to spend millions of pounds in order to make it work. That's not the case. I'm not going to go through the entire list, but if we go down a little bit. So these are the brands that sit in the sort of 100 to 125 category. So these aren't the biggest brands, but these are brands, again, that you probably all have heard of. And they're spending probably £100,000 to £200,000 a year. Now that might be in one particular burst over Christmas in January, or it could be spread over a longer period. But again, it shows that you don't have to be spending millions of pounds to reach. I mean, these figures here are all showing the number of viewers in thousands that they hit. So if you're looking here at Olympic holidays, you're talking about 25 million impressions. So there might be 5 or 6 million different people seeing your advert 4 or 5 times. But if you're only interested in that 10% of the market, then that's probably the perfect strategy for you. If you're Expedia, if you're Travels, if you're someone that's got an appeal to everyone, then it makes sense to be spending a fortune on TV. But with these guys, you can time when the activity goes out, and you can also be very, very targeted with who sees it. So there's lots of upsides to TV. I guess the biggest one for me is obviously that we measure and attribute the responses that happen immediately, but there's a long-term benefit to TV that it's hard to take into account, but we would typically reckon that around about double the response that we can measure is what actually should be attributed back to TV. And as I say, one of the things that people don't realise is that the number of adverts on TV that are totally free is more than half. So most of the time when you're watching a TV advert, it's actually costing you nothing. And the reason for that is that the barb panel is only made up of 5,500 homes, and it's therefore not very sensitive to audiences of less than 10,000. And on some of these channels, the average audience might be 1,000 or 2,000. So you're seeing up to 70 or 80% of the adverts being measured as zero. So in other words, no one on that barb panel is watching them, yet we're seeing responses. So we're typically seeing a response of maybe 5,000 or 6,000 viewers that are watching the channel, and we can attribute that back and see the effectiveness of it. So what it means is that these very small channels, not only do they offer a very, very targeted audience and a low cost per viewer, they're outperforming because they're also delivering you lots and lots of free airtime. So in terms of a good place to start, a good place to test, that's normally where we would start to get a feel for the effectiveness of an ad. So again, what we're seeing now is people responding to TV adverts immediately. So that could be from their sofa, it could be from their living room table, it could be from their bedroom. And I think we all know people spend a lot of time researching holidays on the internet, and they're very familiar with that process. I think given the category that you guys are all in, it's such an immersive and beautiful thing. It doesn't really do it justice if you're clicking on a little text ad in Google. You know, if you're showing someone a beautiful foreign environment with hot sunshine and it's raining outside, or it's cold, or it's January, then you're offering people an escapism. And I think TV probably is the best way to do that. So you're not only driving immediate responses, but you're also, I suppose, changing the perception of your business. And so therefore, you know, if ever you're looking to sell that business, or if ever you're looking to attract, you know, maybe it's other affiliates and all those kind of things, being on TV really, really helps. But now everything is very, very accountable. So you can start to see which channels are performing the best, which days of the week, which times of the day. And again, you know, this data comes back immediately. So one of our big challenges when we started Guerillascope was trying to get the TV industry to play the same game. So if you're advertising with Google, it's very easy to pause a campaign, make adjustments that day or that minute. For us, if we see a campaign that's not working, or a particular channel isn't working, it's paramount that we can get that change made and move the budget around as quickly as possible, because to compete in the market, I think everyone now is expecting that level of optimization. So we work very hard with the likes of Channel 4, with Sky, to make sure that we build that relationship, and it's in everyone's interest. It's in our interest, it's in the broadcast interest and the advertiser's interest to make it effective. So by doing, I suppose, what we would normally look at is planning the campaign a week or 10 days before the start of the next month. So we're looking at fine-tuning things based on the data that we have over the last few weeks. Having set some targets, we talk about benchmarking or measuring your kind of overall site traffic and trying to find different ways of proving the effectiveness of TV. As I say, with this kind of attribution that we now use, we can come back very quickly with CPA figures and CPA targets. And whereas before we might have to go and see the client and ask them how effective the TV's being, we can now pick up the phone and we can both be looking at the same kind of data. And it might look something like this, where you've got different TV channels across the top here, different day parts or times of the day, and then these little green and red areas, so we can start to see where are we below our target cost per acquisition, where are we above, we're all achieving the target we want. And again, typically we might find that it's a bit of a balancing act. So you might have 2 or 3 bigger channels which are driving you the volume and driving you a slightly higher cost per acquisition. And if that's offset with enough of the smaller channels that are driving a bit more frequency, lower cost per acquisition, you can quite often balance it out and get to the target acquisition cost that you're after. It's very easy to focus on the immediacy of TV and say, oh, it's not working. Over time, you can build very, very significant reach. I think this chart very clearly demonstrates that if you want to reach, 70, 80% of the country in 1 month, you've got to invest an awful lot of money to move the needle from 20% to 30% to 40%. This early part of the curve here, it's far more efficient to build cover. So if you're trying to get to just 10% of the country, you can do that relatively inexpensively. And over time, if you keep that budget over the course of a year, 2 years, you've then realised that you've hit half the country or maybe more. So TV has this ability to build your overall perception. And there's no need, as I say, the sort of old model and I guess the traditional model is to try and hit everyone in 1 month. What we're finding actually is it's probably better off to spread that budget across a longer period and probably be on air constantly on things like the travel channel or holiday and cruise channel, and then spike your activity at key times of the year. About 4 years ago, we made the decision to go onto TV ourselves to demonstrate we could make it work for a business-to-business company like ourselves. In October last year, we remade the advert. I'll show you how that worked out in a little while, but this is the advert for those of you that haven't seen it.
At Guerillascope, we get your business on TV. We create targeted advertising campaigns that reach your specific audience. Anytime, any channel. Monitoring response on a minute-by-minute basis. We'll research, plan, and deliver your ad to ensure a successful campaign. So isn't it time Guerillascope put your business on TV? TV advertising has never been so easy.
Okay, so that launched on the 1st of October, and we ran that 30-second ad, I think, for a couple of months, and then we started to play around with some various cut downs. In terms of how well it worked, I mean, the reassuring thing is that we saw a very, very tight correlation between our spend and the leads generated. And the great thing about TV is it is very reliable and scalable in that way. So if you're starting to see a response rate of 1 in 1,000 people, or for us it's more like 1 in 5,000 people, then that's kind of fairly scalable. If you're hitting the right audience, you know, if we know if an ad goes out on Sky News or an undercover boss on Day 4 on Channel 4, we will have the phone ringing and we'll get some more leads through the door straight away. So it's very reliable in that respect. Again, we can start to look at, this is looking at one individual day, and this is again going back to the attribution, so you can start to see very clear spikes in web traffic immediately after individual shows have gone out. So if you like data and you like to analyse things, you can start to really drill down and see what really is driving that response. I'm not going to carry on much longer. This is the last slide I'm going to leave you on, but this is just looking at our creative, and it shows that the 30-second advert that we ran, we put the majority of our budget behind. And you know, we generated over nearly 8,000 leads, and the cost per lead was about £21. But we noticed that the 10-second ad was actually driving a cost per lead of £9. And then when we looked at it a bit closer, we saw there are 3 10-second adverts. There was one that was a sort of standout performer, and it was driving, you know, a cost per lead of less than £7. And the message in that one was that TV advertising has never been so easy. So it was actually driving a better response than our 30-second advert. So we've been able to optimise our campaign. We found that by increasing the number of 10-second ads we're running, we're not only increasing our reach and our frequency, but we're actually bringing more leads in and getting a better return for the investment that we've made. Thank you very much.